The probe to uncover the truth of the deadly Halloween crowd crush in Itaewon continues at the National Assembly. During the second parliamentary hearing today, parties clash over who's to be held accountable for the tragic incident. South Korea's two biggest tech companies are expecting an earnings shock for the fourth quarter of last year. Samsung Electronics estimates its quarterly profit plunging to an 8-year low, while LG also expects profits to have tumbled 90% on-year. The Consumer Electronics Show, the world's biggest event of its kind, returns in Las Vegas. We take you to CES 2023, where futuristic gadgets and gizmos from around the globe are on show. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in South Korea, and thank you for joining us on Arirang News. Tonight, we begin with a parliamentary probe trying to get to the bottom of what happened on the night of Itaewon crowd crush last October. The ruling party and the main opposition party remain clearly divided over whether to hold the Interior Minister accountable for the tragic incident. Our National Assembly correspondent Han Sung-woo starts us off.
South Korea's Minister of the Interior and Safety, Lee Jae-myung, has officially apologized in person to the families bereaved by the Itaewon crowd crush tragedy.
On behalf of the government and on a personal level, I sincerely apologize to the bereaved families of the Itaewon tragedy who lost their loved ones on October 29th.
At the National Assembly on Friday, Minister Lee, Seoul Mayor Oh Se-hun, and Health Minister Jo Kyu-hong were all questioned during the second hearing of the parliamentary probe into the tragedy. The Interior Minister in particular was grilled by lawmakers from the main opposition, Democratic Party of Korea, who pressured him to resign for what they claimed to be the government's inadequate response to the disaster.
For your apology to hold any real weight, you must follow it up with action. The first step should be your immediate resignation.
Legislators from the ruling People Power Party came to Lee's defense, accusing opposition lawmakers of using the parliamentary hearing as part of a political scheme to lure the minister into a perjury trap.
It worries me that this hearing is being held not to get to the bottom of what happened on that tragic night, but rather to collect evidence in the attempt to impeach Minister Lee Jae-myung.
Not long after, the National Assembly approved a bipartisan agreement to extend the parliamentary investigation by 10 days until January 17. The floor leaders of the ruling party and the opposition had jointly announced that they would do so the day before. Details will still have to be ironed out, but the Special Probe Committee's third hearing is scheduled for next week. Until then, it's expected the rival parties will collide over whether to summon survivors of the tragedy and family members of those who died as witnesses. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics projects an earnings shock in its operating profits for the fourth quarter of 2022 because of slowing global demand. And it was no different for LG Electronics. Our economic correspondent Lee Jae-myung has more.
Samsung Electronics expects an earnings shock for the fourth quarter of 2022. The company on Friday reported estimated fourth quarter operating profits of 4.3 trillion won, or roughly $3.3 billion at the current rate. That's down about 69% compared to the same period a year earlier. And it's the first time in 8 years that the tech giant has recorded quarterly operating profits below 5 trillion won. In terms of Q4 sales, it projected an on-year decrease of 8.58%, amounting to 70 trillion won, or a little over $55 billion. Analysts are linking this earnings shock to the global economic slowdown amid inflation and soaring interest rates. One analyst says, as economic uncertainties continue, consumer demand for memory chips and smartphones is dropping.
Demand for PCs, smartphones, and servers have been dropping from the second half of last year. Sluggish performance for chips appears to be behind this result as more companies tighten their purse strings. Prices also dropped due to a stockpile up. Sales of smartphones have also slightly declined as well.
In fact, one investment securities firm forecasted operating profits for semiconductors in Q4 to come in at $1.1 billion. That's down 70% from the previous quarter. A sharp fall in the $1 exchange rate is also seen as one of the reasons for the earnings shock. Experts also predict the downward trend for Samsung's operating profits to remain throughout the second quarter of this year, as there are no signs of demand recovering for semiconductors yet. Meanwhile, for the fourth quarter, LG Electronics projected operating profits of 65.5 billion won, or roughly $52 million, down 91% on year due to sluggish demand for home appliances. However, in terms of Q4 sales, it has projected an increase of 5.2%, amounting to 21.8 trillion won, or just over $17 billion. That's an all-time high figure for any quarter. The company also reported that its estimated sales for 2022 as a whole surpassed 80 trillion won for the first time to 83.4 trillion won, or more than $66 billion. Lee Jae-myung, Arirang News.
The world's most influential tech event is back. Consumer Electronics Show 2023 kicked off at Las Vegas on Thursday local time. More than 3,000 tech companies are unveiling their latest ideas at the show. Our business correspondent Kim Hyun-sung breaks it down.
A tech extravaganza of more than 3,000 companies touting their most innovative work. It's the Consumer Electronics Show 2023. This year, it's back to its pre-pandemic glory, with tech titans Google, Amazon, and Microsoft returning. They were absent for last year's show due to the spread of Omicron. CES expects more than 100,000 people to visit during the 4-day event.
It's fantastic. There's a ton of stuff to see.
I actually was here in 2019 as well, before the pandemic, and it is really wonderful to be back.
It's easy to get lost in the winding maze of CES, packed with a plethora of booths. So here's a quick and easy guide. Samsung and LG go head-to-head with bending screens. LG has put forward its latest foldable OLED display, while Samsung premiered its Flex Hybrid, a screen that's both foldable and stretchable. The two South Korean tech giants also try to get visitors' attention with their show-stopping booths. LG has a mega display of 260 OLED screens. This year, its crowning pieces were the wireless OLED screen and the crisp built-in displays for cars of the future. Samsung took up 3,000 meters of space and unveiled its latest easy-to-use smart home solution called SmartThings. Automakers steal the scene. From color-changing concept cars from BMW to a flying electric car from Asuka, CES took future cars to the next level. Japanese company Sony also unveiled its prototype electric car, a joint venture with Honda that takes the best of both worlds and offers in-car gaming. Sustainability is at the core. From South Korean shipbuilder Hyundai Heavy's eco-friendly maritime transport to SK's food truck selling animal-free dairy desserts, sustainability was behind many of the innovations at CES. This year more than ever, scientists are geared towards inventions that support a greener future. But all the glamour of the CES may be chipped away by economic uncertainty. With potential investors becoming a little more cautious, analysts say they've been looking for quick returns rather than long-term promise. So many of the most futuristic ideas from capital-hungry startups may not see the light of day. But even this glum projection wasn't enough to fully dampen the enthusiastic buzz at CES that has returned in full swing. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
Concerns are growing among consumers as food prices remain high ahead of the Lunar New Year holiday, 설날, when Koreans set out tables with traditional food to pay respects to their ancestors. Survey of 90 retailers by the Korea National Council of Consumer Organizations shows that on average, preparing a table for a family of 4 will cost about 294,000 Korean won, or at the current rate, about $230. This is up nearly 4% compared to last year. The survey says it's cheapest when purchased from traditional markets, where the average cost is about $190. At large supermarkets, it costs about $225, and at department stores, about $370. Gasoline prices have been going up here in the nation since the start of the new year. Last year, amid soaring global energy prices, the Korean government had been cutting taxes on fuel to lower the cost at the pump. But it has reduced the size of the cut this year. Shin Ha-young tells us more on this phenomenon.
Cars in line waiting to fill up at a gas station with relatively cheaper gasoline prices.
I've noticed how gasoline costs have really increased whenever I've checked the price this year. I keep looking for gas stations with lower prices.
This came after the government's decision to reduce the fuel tax cut. The new tax cut of 25% came into force on the first day of 2023. With the gasoline prices hitting record highs around the world last year, South Korea had been offering a 37% discount on fuel to ease the burden on drivers. But from the first day of 2023, this was cut to 25%. That rate will last until at least the end of April. The reduction of the tax cut to 25% means the price of gasoline is expected to rise by an average of 99 Korean won, or about 8 US cents per liter. At this gas station, a liter of gasoline has already risen by 70 Korean won, or roughly 6 US cents compared to December 31st, adding to drivers' burden at the start of the new year.
I can feel the effect of rising gasoline prices. As I drive a lot, I'm expecting to spend an average of $80 to $120 per month.
According to one professor, the recent adjustment could impact household budgets in several ways.
The recent rise in oil prices affects farmers' heating bills for running greenhouses, which pushes up the prices of green vegetables.
She also suggested that if the government is to further reduce the tax cuts, it would be better to do so in the second half of this year, as the inflation is expected to remain high in the first half. Meanwhile, global oil prices are a key factor behind the fuel tax cut policy.
Whether to adjust the fuel tax to its original level will depend on the level of international oil prices. We forecast that the annual average global oil price will be around $85 US, meaning that compared to last year, we are expecting this year's price to be more stable.
He added that if global oil prices stay at their current level, the government will likely reduce the tax cut again. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
The main opposition Democratic Party's leader, Lee Jae-myung, is set to appear for questioning at the prosecutor's office on Tuesday next week. This comes after Lee rejected the prosecution's call to appear in late December, citing pre-scheduled plans. According to the DP spokesperson on Friday, Lee's lawyers and the prosecutor's office agreed on the date, and he said he'll make an appearance with his head held high. The opposition leader is being questioned over allegations that he received illegal bribes from companies via the municipal Seongnam Football Club in the mid-2010s while serving as the mayor of the city in Gyeonggi-do province. He also has been accused of relaxing architecture and development regulations for those companies in return. It'll be the first time that Lee appears for questioning by the prosecutors since he was elected party leader in August. South Korea's new COVID-19 cases fell for the third day on Friday, coming to 56,954. The daily figure has now stayed below 60,000 for 3 consecutive days. 258 of Friday's cases originated from abroad, and 80% of them were from China. South Korea is now requiring people arriving from mainland China to submit a negative COVID test before boarding their flight and to get tested after they arrive. These rules will also apply starting Saturday to travelers from Hong Kong and Macau. Russian President Vladimir Putin has called for a 36-hour ceasefire in Ukraine from January 6th to the 7th to allow people to celebrate Orthodox Christmas. Ukraine and other countries, however, have dismissed the gesture as a ruse to stop Ukrainian forces from advancing. Choi Min-jung reports.
Russia has announced a temporary ceasefire in Ukraine for Orthodox Christmas. The Kremlin said President Vladimir Putin on Thursday instructed the defense minister to enforce a ceasefire for 36 hours from January 6th to the 7th. President Putin called Ukraine to declare a ceasefire as well so people have a chance to attend services. However, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russia is using the ceasefire as cover to prevent Ukrainian forces from advancing in the eastern Donbas region.
They now want to use Christmas as a cover, albeit briefly, to stop the advances of our boys in Donbas and to bring equipment, ammunition, and mobilized troops closer to our positions. What will that give them? Only yet another increase in their total losses.
President Zelensky said there can be no ceasefire until Russian soldiers leave or are thrown out. In the United States, President Biden expressed skepticism too.
I found it interesting. He was ready to bomb hospitals and nurseries and churches, and on the 25th, the New Year's, and I mean, you know, I think he's trying to find some oxygen.
British Foreign Secretary James Cleverly said the supposed ceasefire will do nothing to achieve peace. Meanwhile, on Thursday, the U.S. and Germany announced plans to ramp up military support for Kyiv. The U.S. intends to provide about 50 Bradley fighting vehicles, while Germany is set to provide Ukraine with Marder fighting vehicles. These heavily armed armored vehicles are used to move soldiers around the battlefield. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Korean content, games, K-pop, and dramas have now become a game changer in the nation's exports. And the new year will see bold investment going into the sector, which President Yoon Suk-yeol defines as an essential pillar of the nation's economy. Shin Se-byuk has the details.
The Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism will inject over 6.7 trillion won, or roughly over $5.3 billion, to support South Korean media content this year to further expand K-culture to the world. In a policy briefing to President Yoon Suk-yeol on Thursday, the Culture Minister spoke of the importance of nurturing K-content as it has become the country's #1 major source of growth.
K-content has become the major export growth engine. It will be the game changer that changes the export landscape of the country.
The key agenda out of the 6 presented includes further promoting K-content. The ministry allocated its largest budget of 790 billion won, or some $620 million, for nurturing promising firms in the industry. In particular, it pledged to provide intensive support to the game industry, which takes up 70% of the total content exports. It will also give comprehensive support to promote a variety of online fictional content like online novels and cartoons. Also, the government will provide systematic support to boost production for OTT platforms. Specifically, it will offer over 45 billion won, or nearly $36 million in financial support for movie and TV show production, and 30 billion won for post-production work. Through those efforts, the ministry aims to increase the country's content exports to $15 billion this year and $22 billion by 2027, around a twofold growth from 2021. Another major pillar of the 2023 work plan involves reviving tourism through the rising popularity of K-culture. To do so, the government plans to declare the year 2023 as the year of Visit Korea and hold tourism roadshows in 15 big cities around the world. The ministry will also work to create a cluster for history and culture-themed tourism centered around the formal presidential compound of Cheongwade and surrounding old neighborhood. Detailed plans are yet to be made, but the ministry said the advisory committee will come up with a concrete plan soon. Other plans include supporting local areas that lack cultural opportunities and supporting artists with disabilities, such as opening a barrier-free performance arts hall. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
No need for K-pop fans to be discouraged because BTS is taking a hiatus from performing as a group. There are plenty of other captivating boy and girl groups coming out this year with a lot of new material. Kim Jung-sil has all the groups that you might want to know.
With the eldest member BTS having begun 18 months of service in the South Korean military, fans are looking to other groups poised to become K-pop's next global phenomenon. One such act is the boy group Stray Kids. The boys have already proven themselves by topping the charts on Spotify with its new album Skid's Reply and Billboard with last year's albums Ordinary and Accident. Stray Kids will be meeting their fans this year on their second world tour Maniac, which will take them to countries including Thailand, Singapore, and Australia. Meanwhile, the group NCT Dream are getting tons of attention in South Korea with their winter album Candy, which includes a remake of a song of the same name by the legendary K-pop group H.O.T., which is evoking a lot of nostalgia. Both NCT Dream and 127 also plan to meet their fans on tours this year in major cities around the world. Now moving on to some powerful girl groups. Fans of Blackpink might be interested to know that a sister group is launching this year, Baby Monster. Reports say it's like all 7 members of this group are Jennie, one of Blackpink's singers, and fans can't wait to meet them. And the latest song from the group, NewJeans, called OMG, already has more than 11 million views on YouTube. I asked some experts why K-pop is so widely accepted around the world and how it can grow in the future.
If you ask me, or anybody really, what are your top 10, albums of all time or top 10 tracks? Probably it's stuff you listened to before you were 20. Back when you're a teenager, you're going through a lot of emotional changes, right? And life is pretty intense, emotionally, intellectually. And music is the soundtrack to your life. It can encapsulate your emotional state and help you give expression to your emotions. Or where you are in your life, and K-pop fulfills that function.
Because the world these days revolves around integration, K-pop will expand even more and become more diverse by incorporating what South Korea is good at, such as choreography, but also bringing in new technologies and other countries and cultures.
So this year, fans can look forward to a K-pop that's more exciting than ever. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
The South Korean city of Hwacheon in Gangwon-do province is holding its famous ice festival this weekend for the first time in 3 years, having canceled it previously because of the pandemic. It starts on Saturday and runs through January 29th. Visitors can try to catch trout through holes cut into a frozen river. In past years, from 2006 to 2019, the festival has attracted more than 1 million visitors each time. The organizers said they're preparing measures to ensure the safety of visitors against COVID. They also said they're going to decide how many people can take part each day based on conditions at the venue, such as the thickness of the ice. Arirang TV is launching a brand new news program, Weekly News Highlights, coming from Arirang's very own Smart Life studio, a virtual studio. The studio is able to adapt and transform into a variety of settings and backgrounds. Weekly News Highlights will cover headlines from the past week, as well as the behind the story corner on the hottest news of the week. The program is part of Arirang's MAX project, which stands for Metaverse, Artificial Intelligence, and Extended Reality, hoping to introduce more refreshing shows and program through the project. The show will be aired at 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. Korea time every Saturday and Sunday and more.
Fairly mild conditions will continue until tomorrow for much of South Korea. Temperatures will stay in the positive range for the entire day with snowfall until the morning. And after the snow, a mass of frigid air will bring colder temperatures on Sunday. Expect high concentrations of fine dust across the nation tomorrow. For the Seoul metropolitan area, Chungcheongdo and Gyeongsang-Bukdo provinces, air quality will be standing in the very bad range. The rest of the country will also see poor air quality. Make sure to wear a mask that can filter out the dust particles, such as a KF94. As for the amount of snowfall, Gangwon-do will see the most with up to 10 centimeters in the forecast. Eastern Gyeonggi-do and parts of Gyeongsang-Bukdo provinces will see up to 8 centimeters. Other regions, including here in Seoul, will have 1 to 5 centimeters in the forecast. Tomorrow, Seoul and Daegu will be starting off at 1 degree, and highs in Seoul get up to 4 degrees. Daejeon 5, Busan and Jeju will be warm at 10 degrees. Next week, clear skies will make a return across the capital region. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all for this Friday night's newscast. Thank you for staying with us. Have a great weekend and take care.